Welcome, everyone, to the 12th episode of True Love. This is your host, Maya, and whenever this message is reaching you, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Today's episode is titled, Reciprocity is the Key to a Balanced Relationship. Now, I know that everyone wants to have healthy, meaningful relationships that not only helps others, but also helps you. So it's like having a circle of people that you can trust that's going to build you, that's going to inspire you, that's going to make you a better version of yourself. And I believe that this is a necessary topic because a lot of us tend to expect that in relationships, they're not supposed to be mutually beneficial. If your relationship is not mutually beneficial, then that means that it's not beneficial. And so that could mean that you're giving more or you're giving of a positive energy and the person in return is giving a negative energy. This is why we have to realize that boundaries are a very necessary thing, and you have to be able to decipher when you should allow someone access or close access to you and when you should allow someone limited access. Now, we know this from a common sense point of view that we can't just let everybody get close to us. But that still doesn't mean we don't, exercise the love mindset when we're dealing with people that we may not know or may not be close to us. So, in today's episode, I would like you to take a moment to just meditate on the things that are being said here and decide what you want to take away from today's episode, what you're going to add to your love mindset journey, and what truths you're going to take from today's episode. So I know we've all heard of the golden rule. And the golden rule is simply this: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what you put out essentially is what you receive back. There is a flow of energy that takes place, and this is why the love mindset is so essential to positive relationships, healthy relationships, and just having an overall positive life and positive and balanced life. And before we even go any further as to elaborating on the golden rule, we have to understand that the golden rule has a built-in level of reciprocity in there. It says, do to others as you want them to do to you. So that means there is a mutually beneficial exchange that is taking place. And since it has this built-in reciprocity, I want us to define what reciprocity is. We have this way of hearing words, and in our minds, we decide what we think those words mean already. We have these, what I like to call urban definitions or even personal definitions. And it's important for us to really know what the true definition of these words are. So when we're talking about, okay, we need more reciprocity. We need to have a balanced reciprocity for this relationship to work. You understand what you're requiring in a relationship, what you're requesting, and what you need in a relationship to make it work. Let's define what reciprocity is. Now, reciprocity has 3 definitions. So I'm going to start off with the first one. Reciprocity is the quality or state of being reciprocal. Definition 2, mutual dependence, action, or influence. Definition 3, mutual exchange of privileges. Now, I want us to focus on the first definition. which was the equality or state of being reciprocal. So in order for us to understand what the quality or the state of being reciprocal is, we need to define what reciprocal means. So reciprocal has two definitions. First definition, given, felt, or done in return. Second definition, bearing or binding each of two parties equally. So when you listen to the definitions of reciprocity and being reciprocal, you understand that there is a mutual action that is taking place. There is a mutual exchange of privileges. That means that as one gives, so one receives. There's a balance that is taking place. There is an exchange of equal privileges. So reciprocity really is the epitome of the golden rule. You know, some even call the golden rule the principle of reciprocity. And there are many ways for us to kind of describe what reciprocity is. So I've already said it, once before. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Here's another one. Give what you would like to receive in return. So if you would like more love, you have to give more love. If you would like more understanding, you have to give more understanding. That's reciprocity. And I just want us to know that there are different types of reciprocity. So if someone says, I need more reciprocity, that's not enough. Yes, you understand that they would like an even exchange. They would like to get back what they've been giving. But you need to understand what they're trying to get back and give back. So before we go any further, I think it would be wise for us to kind of look through the three types or the three major types of reciprocity and kind of get a feel and understanding for those. So there are three types of reciprocity. The first one is balanced reciprocity, which is kind of like a 1-for-1. It's like a 1-to-1 ratio. It's completely balanced. And so what does balanced reciprocity look like? It is giving or doing something and expecting the same exact thing in return. So if I give you a gift, I'm expecting you to get me a gift. If I give you good advice, I'm expecting you to also give me good advice. That's the 1-to-1 ratio that I'm talking about. That's balanced reciprocity, which is, again, the name of this episode is Reciprocity is the Key to a Balanced Relationship. So in your relationship, if you always have in the back of your mind this 1-to-1 ratio, and you're thinking about the golden rule, okay, let me treat this person the way I want to be treated. You're going to automatically have balanced reciprocity because you're saying, I want to do 1-for-1. If this person does me a favor, I want to do them a favor. If this person is nice to me, I also want to be nice to them. Right? And balanced reciprocity is the main reciprocity that most people are referring to when they're referring to, I need reciprocity. So that means that someone in the relationship may be feeling like the relationship has become imbalanced. So I like to use this example because it's an easy example that a lot of people can follow. And I know a lot of husband and wives can relate to this as well. And even if you have friends or you're in the dating and courting phase, you can also relate to what I'm about to say. Finances is a big one. So sometimes you're in a relationship where you have one that likes to save more and one who likes to spend more. So when you have that kind of situation, you want to make sure that one person isn't spending all the time and one person isn't saving all the time. You want to make sure that you kind of create this balance. So in a husband and wife relationship, you want to make sure your spouse is not spending money that is spoken for something else. And you also want to make sure that your spouse who likes to save is not saving so much that they're not enjoying life or they're not treating themselves. So there's this balance of reciprocity that has to take place where the spender sometimes has to convince the saver to spend sometimes, and sometimes the saver has to convince the spender to save. So it's kind of like balancing out the areas of finance so that we're not spending all the money and then can't cover our bills, but at the same time, we're not spending all the money on bills and not enjoying life. So there's a level of reciprocity. There's an even exchange that has to take place where you kind of balance each other out. And so when someone says, I need reciprocity, what they're saying is, I need you to give me more of what I'm giving you. And that's a way to kind of look at it. And then if you examine how the relationship is going, you can determine what areas you need to step up in that can deliver that level of reciprocity. Like we mentioned in the last episode was true love is obedient. Reciprocity plays into obedience. If you know that this is something that is important to the person that you love or the people that you love, you're going to have no problem going above and beyond to achieve a level of reciprocity that is good and healthy and beneficial to the relationship. Now, the second type of reciprocity is generalized reciprocity. And generalized reciprocity is giving freely without expecting anything in return. And this type of reciprocity is usually done with those close to you, like friends, family, your spouse, loved ones, children. This generalized reciprocity and I especially love to say children because, I have this phrase that I say sometimes, like, children are bosses and children hire you without pay, or in reverse, you have hired yourself to become a parent the moment that you find out that you're going to be a parent. So in both cases, you're going to give freely without expecting anything in return. Because when that baby cries, you're going to make sure that they're either fed, their diapers changed, or that they get the rest that they need. So you're going to try to make sure that they're as comfortable as possible. And you're not expecting anything in return. You're not expecting a thank you. You're not expecting them to say, good job, Mom. Great job, Dad. No. You're doing it, and this is an example of generalized reciprocity. This means that you're giving freely without anticipating, I need to get some of this back. You understand that in these relationships, especially the close ones, it's not about always getting something in return. It's not always about making sure that there is an even exchange. Sometimes it's just about pleasing that other person. So this is also a good type of reciprocity when you want to exhibit, look, I love you. I'm going to be here for you. I'm your support system, and I'm not expecting anything in return. But if this person loves you just as much as you love them, they're going to do generalized reciprocity back, which then eventually turns into balanced reciprocity. They're giving freely, not expecting anything in return. But if you have a deep relationship with someone, they definitely want to do something to make your day. So generalized reciprocity sometimes start off in relationships where there is more of an authority figure sometimes. So like I said, parent-child. And sometimes it's also done in romantic relationships as well, or even business relationships. When you think about the customer is always right, that's generalized reciprocity. You're saying, I'm going to give the customer more than what they're asking for because I want them to come back again. I want them to feel welcome. I want them to know that we're here for them. But generally speaking, the generalized reciprocity is more for close family and friends and loved ones. But you do see it transfer over into business sometimes. Just like you see balanced reciprocity sometimes end up crossing over to the friends, family, and loved ones, because eventually you guys are going to have such a deep connection. You're going to know exactly what the other person needs and how to speak their love language, which we'll get to a little later in this episode. And then negative reciprocity is the third type of reciprocity. And negative reciprocity is when a person is giving the bare minimum only to receive the maximum benefit in return. So negative reciprocity is kind of like that person who's I'm trying to find a better way to describe this person, but they're takers, they're opportunists, they're the type of person that they're even sometimes manipulative. They're even sometimes do it just so they can get the maximum out of you. And so you have to recognize when someone is operating in negative reciprocity. With all things in life, we still have to talk about the good and the bad. And this would be the bad type of reciprocity, where a person is given like the bare minimum only to receive the maximum benefit in return. So what could this look like? Okay. I'm trying to look up a simple example. Let me think of one. Okay. So let me put it this way. So this person listens to this person loves to come to you with their problems. And then you're like their personal psychiatrist. And they come to you with all their problems, and you always listen and you always give them great advice. Right? And then when in turn you are going through problems or you have an issue and you want them to listen and then give you the best advice, they'll listen for maybe, like, you'll sit there and listen to them for hours. Like I said, you're their personal psychiatrist or whatever. You're their personal life coach. I don't even like the term psychiatrist, but let's say you're their personal life coach. They'll come to you, sit on your couch, talk to you for hours. You're talking about everything that's happening with them. You ain't even discussed nothing about you. But you love them this much. You're giving them generalized reciprocity, and they understand this about you. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to tell her all my problems, and she's going to give me the best advice ever. Then when it's your turn, they either have an excuse, oh, I don't have that much time, let's get to the point. They'll listen, and then they'll say one or two things. And it's like the quickest interaction possible. But whereas when you, and it's flipped, you give maximum benefit. You give the most time. You say time is not a factor. We could just sit here until you feel comfortable. We're going to work through this. That's negative reciprocity. And there's probably many, many other examples. I can use an example in my life. So I had this friend. We used to take turns when we go out to eat. And when it was my turn to pay, we ate at the most expensive place. But when it was her turn to pay, we ate at the cheapest place. Like we could never pick a place where it would be almost like an equal exchange of dollars spent. So it'd be like, to give you an idea, it would be like, okay, so when it was my turn to pay, we might eat at Red Lobster. And then when it was her turn to pay, we'd probably eat at McDonald's. Like, just to give you an idea. Now, those are not the actual restaurants we went to go out to eat. But that just gives you an idea. And as far as like money and value of, what the bill would come out to be. So That's negative reciprocity. You do the bare minimum. You're still given in exchange, but you always make sure it's minimal or as minimal as possible. And look, I'm not judging. We all are works in progress. We've all probably fit somewhere in these categories before in our life, or may even be there still today. But you do that self-examination and you determine what level of reciprocity are you operating on most days, and make the adjustments. Again, do the SWOT analysis. Look at where your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats are. And if you didn't listen to that episode, you can go back and listen to that. But self-examination is very important when we're talking about the love mindset and actually making these adjustments and changes to our life so that we can become better versions of ourselves. So I just want to take us, now that we have defined what reciprocity is and what it means to be reciprocal, and we've gone over the 3 types of reciprocity, I want us to go and find supporting documentation to support what we have discussed so far. And because I always like to take it back, I always say take everything in the love mindset back to your source of faith, and always make sure that your source of faith supports all the principles and the things that we're talking about at the True Love Podcast. And as we continue on in our journey of the love mindset. So the first scripture I'd like to go to is Matthew 7, chapter 7, verse 12. And I'm reading from NIV. So Matthew chapter 7, verse 12 reads as follows. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. So we mentioned that reciprocity is like, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And here we're seeing that in Matthew 7, verse 12, it's saying, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. That is the golden rule. That is the golden rule right there. And that's what reciprocity is. Reciprocity is the golden rule. The epitome of reciprocity is the golden rule. So you have to keep that in mind when you're in your relationships and, interacting with people, whether it's personal or professional, that you always remember to do to others as you would want them to do to you. Remember reciprocity. Remember the golden rule when you're dealing with people in your everyday life. The second scripture I'd like us to go to is Galatians 6 through 7. So Galatians chapter 6, verses 6 through 7 read as follows, NIV. Nevertheless, the one who receives instruction in the word should share all good things with their instructor. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. So, if you think about reciprocity, you can also think of it as reaping and sowing. So whatever you sow is what you reap. And remember, God is not to be mocked. So as you sow, that's exactly how you will reap. So make sure you're doing balanced reciprocity or generalized reciprocity, and that you're not one of those people that do negative reciprocity, because it has a negative impact on your relationship if you're doing negative reciprocity. Because after a while, people are going to realize that You may not care as much as you're saying because your actions are not matching what you're saying, and you're doing just the bare minimum to get the best out of the relationship. And if you want your relationship to flourish and cultivate it and keep it growing, keep elevating it, you're going to want to match. You're going to either want to match exactly what's being given to you or even go above and beyond what's being done to you, what's being done for you. And again, this usually happens with, again, friends, family, and loved ones. This is where you'll see the generalized reciprocity happen the most. So, as we're sitting here and we're examining scripture to support everything that we've said before, I want us to also keep in mind that we need to think about, ways in which we can have more reciprocity in our relationships. So as we're going through these scriptures, I want you to keep that in mind, that reciprocity is discussed and it is a biblical principle, and that you need to see these scriptures that we're going over and see how you can apply it to your everyday life and see how how these principles are being practiced and done in everyday life. So I want to go to the third scripture for this episode, and that is Proverbs chapter 11, verse 24. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 24, NIV, reads as follows. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. So now, we were just talking about a little bit about negative reciprocity. And I brought up the example of, my friend that used to kind of take advantage of when it was my turn to pay for us to eat out. And I want you to realize what Proverbs 11:24 just said. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. Now, when you think about that, how far do you think a person is going to get with negative reciprocity? They're not going to get very far. Because if you withhold unduly, what benefit does that have to you? Because remember, in the last scripture we just talked about in Galatians 6, verses 6 through 7, we talked about how you reap what you sow. So if you're given the bare minimum, or you're withholding unduly, it's in your power to help somebody and you're not helping them, or you have the ability to do more than what you're actually doing, but you refuse to do so. That's what's coming back. And could it be that the reason your relationships are not working out is because you're not practicing reciprocity the right way? You're just giving the bare minimum. How can you say, and like I said, I'm not judging. Just think about this. How can you say you truly love somebody, but give them the bare minimum of love? That's, you could just say you really like somebody. It's kind of the same thing with reciprocity. It's better for you to give exactly as you're receiving, or give even more than you're receiving. I would opt for you to give more than you're receiving, and to give without even expecting anything in return. Because that's just beneficial to you on a whole. They have these sayings that they say about, certain things. People are looking for love out here, and it's very difficult in these times. But could it be that it's hard to find love because you don't give love? These are the tough questions that we need to ask ourselves. Are we following the golden rule in all areas of our life? Or are we just choosing who we follow the golden rule with. And this is why the love mindset is so important. We have to recognize that we must do more. We have to love ourselves better, and that in turn is going to help us love others better. And as we're sitting here thinking about how we love others better, and we have sat here and determined that generalized reciprocity is best. So if we got to put this in order, generalized reciprocity is number 1. Balanced reciprocity is number 2. And negative reciprocity is just a straight no. Not in the love mindset. Negative reciprocity, if you're there, you want to grow out of that. You want to mature from that level of reciprocity. And so I want to go to the final scripture of this episode that talks about reciprocity. And then I want us to go over some steps or some key notes to, have in the back of your mind if you want to practice better reciprocity and having that balanced relationship. So the 4th scripture for today's episode is 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 14. So 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 14, NIV reads as follows. At the present time, your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn, their plenty will supply what you need. The goal is equality. So, we see in this scripture that you're blessed to help others. So if you have the ability to do for someone now, do for that person now, because in your time of need, they're going to be blessed and they're going to be able to help you out when you're down and out. So reciprocity really does make sure that all of us are good. It really cultivates, nourishes, nurtures, flourishes healthy relationships. Reciprocity is the key to a balanced relationship. No one feels like they're not getting what they need out of the relationship. Everyone is mutually benefited and everyone is mutually happy. And that's the goal in relationships. At least that should be the goal in any relationship. That all parties are happy. All parties are content and benefited. So I know that this was a lot of information to take in. And, you may not have thought about reciprocity in this way that we've been speaking about in this episode. But reciprocity is definitely one of the keys to a balanced and healthy relationship. And like I said, in your own private time, take the time to examine what level of reciprocity you're operating on. And if needed, make the necessary adjustments. And if, you're saying, you know what, I'm good, always keep in mind to continue to keep doing whatever, to keep doing what you're doing and maintain that level of reciprocity. Because balanced reciprocity and generalized reciprocity are going to bring you those successful and healthy relationships, those meaningful relationships, those lifetime relationships. It's going to bring you your roadies. It's going to bring you the people, the circle of love that you need to be around you through thick and thin, good and bad, and all in between. So now that we have covered reciprocity. I think, to the point where we need to ask ourselves, okay, how can we practice reciprocity in our current relationships? And how can we better our reciprocity in our current and future relationships? Well, the first thing that I believe is very helpful to all relationships is communication. You have to be open to discussing your boundaries, your needs, and your wants in a relationship. You have to be willing to put your cards on the table and tell people what your expectations are. I don't think that any of us are mind readers. Sometimes we are, especially after we get to know a person. We can possibly read your mind after a while. But in the initial beginning stages, and no, I can't read your mind. If you don't tell me what it is you expect or what it is that you want or that you need out of this relationship, I don't know that until you tell me. So you need to communicate that. Communication is really underrated. I think, social media has played a role in that, but we have to be better at that. We can't just communicate through text or an email. Sometimes you need to have these face-to-face communications as well, so that people can see where you're coming from. They can know what, they need to provide in this relationship and if it's going to be a viable relationship or not. Sometimes things don't work out. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because instead of you wasting time and years on something that you think may not have worked or may not have been compatible, you knew from the beginning because you communicated it. And then if you have current relationships and something goes wrong in the middle of the relationship, because relationships are constantly evolving, so there are going to be ups and downs. You can't say, I'm going to keep this to myself. You have to communicate. So, make sure you're open to discussing anything that needs to be brought up in the relationship. And that would be something that would help with your reciprocity. And make sure you're willing to do the same for the other person or for the other people in the group or the relationship. The second thing that I would like to say is beneficial for better reciprocity in a relationship is having emotional intelligence. Now, having emotional intelligence to me is kind of like putting yourself in the other person's shoes and seeing how they're responding to the things that's being said or the actions that's being that's taken. How they respond emotionally. How does it make that person feel? Do these actions make them feel great, good, uplifted, or do these actions make them feel down? Like, read the room. Know what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. Not just for the situation, but also for the person that you're around or the person that you're with. So having that emotional intelligence is really going to help you in understanding when, okay, you might want to talk to your spouse about something, but this is not the time to talk to them about it right now, because you read the room and you realize, ooh, something else is going on. Or maybe they're not in a good mood right now. That's emotional intelligence. Just knowing, okay, there's a time and a place. Put yourself in this person's shoes. If you make this statement right now, is this statement out of love or is this statement going to hurt? You got to think about these things. It's very important. And the third thing is knowing a person's love language. You know, this is important because not all people love the same way. And this is a whole other episode altogether, love languages. But everybody doesn't have the same love language. And knowing a person's love language will help you to see if you are really having reciprocity in your relationship. You see, for you, showing love could be spending time. But for them, showing love could be buying a gift. For them, showing love could be going out to dinner or going out and enjoying yourselves. So you have to understand each other's love language. You know, I like to say this, and I don't want to sound stereotypical, but majority of men's love language is physical touch. And majority of women's love language is time, communication. And this is why, you know, if you've been married, if you're married and you've been married for a long time, you know already how it goes. You know, if both of you are working and your wife comes home, she's gonna tell you about her whole day. Or even if y'all talk at lunch, she's gonna tell you about what's been going on at work or what's been going on in her day. Even if she's a stay-at-home mom, that's her job. She's gonna tell you about how the day is going. And men understand that is the love language, and that is that her communicating and him spending time with her and hearing her day out, that's showing her love. And she may understand that showing her husband love may mean spending some intimate time with her husband, or going out to dinner and spending that dedicated time where they can have that physical touch, hugging, dancing, and spending intimate time. This is part of understanding someone's love language. So when you're thinking of reciprocity, and I have to say this is key. Okay? You need to take a note on this one. When you're trying to measure the reciprocity in your relationship, or you're just keeping like a mental note, don't keep a mental note based on your love language. Keep a mental note based on the other person's love language. Even if it's your friend or it's a business contact, think of it by how they like things to be done. You know, some people like to discuss business over lunch. Some people like to discuss business at a sporting event. Or even some people like to play golf while they're discussing business. Whatever that language is, that level of that reciprocity energy should be what that person enjoys and likes doing. So you can't judge the reciprocity based on how you would do it. And then I would say even take it a step further. You should be basing your reciprocity on what the person would love, not what you would like, what they would like. And so the fourth level, hear me. The fourth thing that I think would enhance reciprocity in a relationship is understanding how your choices affects your relationships. And the reason why this is important is you need to know how your individual choices are going to impact your loved ones. So let me think about this for a minute. And let us think about this for a minute. If you're deciding to go into business and you're going to start your own business, and you know, this is something that you got to do. You know, you have to do this. This is not something that you can just put your dream on hold and say, you know what, I'm going to put my dream on hold because how this is going to affect everyone. Again, we could go back to communication on that. But the key is understanding that if you're going to start your own business, the level of time and commitment is going to take, that you may not be able to spend time with your loved ones, that you may miss out on certain events. And you need to communicate that with your family, or you need to communicate that with your loved ones and let them know, okay, I'm going to be doing this, and it may mean I may have less time to do X, Y, and Z. But I want you to know I'm doing this because this is my dream, and I believe that it will be beneficial to all of us. So we're going to have a moment of time where it may be a little hard. We may not be spending as much time together. We may not be doing as many things together. But know that this has a positive outcome in the long run. Again, we're not mind readers. So you can't just, oh, I'm starting my business and expect everyone to just fall in line and understand that this means less time with mom, or less time with dad, or less time with hubby, or less time with my girlfriend, or whatever. Like, you have to understand how your choices are going to affect your loved ones. You have to take it into consideration that your choices affect your relationship. So, choices should be decided, but then also discussed, especially if they're going to impact the whole household, especially if it's going to impact all of your relationships. So practice this reciprocity, because if you know that if someone were to do the same exact thing to you, how would it make you feel? And if you're constantly operating on that reciprocal kind of perspective, then you can understand, okay, what is needed so that I can benefit and everyone else can benefit out of this relationship. So that's pretty much all I had for this episode. And, I just wanted to bring reciprocity to the forefront so that we could really meditate and think about not just, doing the usual day in and day out, but really thinking about how our actions and how the things that we say and we do are putting out some sort of energy, some sort of impact that we're going to indirectly get back. So if you feel like you need more love, you need to put more love out. If you feel like you need to spend more time, you need to spend more time. If you feel like you're not getting the adequate love, support, and the things that you need out of the relationship, think about, are you doing those things for someone else? You always got to put that back into perspective. Am I giving what I want to receive back? You see, this is what kills relationships, is when people stop doing stuff like this. When they stop thinking about how it affects the other person. When they stop thinking about, would I like this? When you stop thinking about how this is going to affect them emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. So I hope that you learned some valuable things in today's episode, and that you're able to take some principles and perspectives from today's episode and add them to your truths and perspectives and make the necessary adjustments. I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me and listening to each episode as you work through your personal growth and your personal development and becoming a better version of yourself. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate your feedback. And, if there are any topics that you would like me to discuss, on this podcast, feel free to reach out to me and let me know, and I'll make sure I do a podcast episode covering it. So you know how I do. I want to make sure that you guys get time to spend with your loved ones and enjoy each other, and make sure that you are letting your love light shine everywhere that you go. If you feel like this episode gave you something of value, please feel free to hit the like button, share it, and subscribe. Support the platform so that we can continue to grow and we can continue to reach more people, and that we can continue to grow the love mindset, because we really do need more love in this world. And as one teaches another one and helps another one, and as we all come together, we'll see the impact that it has on not just your relationships, but all relationships everywhere. And that is the whole point of all of this. We just want to make sure that we are acting in love and behaving in love and spreading love. So again, I hope that this episode brought you great value, and remember to let your love light shine everywhere that you go, and I will catch you guys in the next episode. Take care.